Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Big Game Bound. It's week 10 of the NFL season. We're down to one undefeated team, and it's not the Patriots, and one winless team, and it's not the Dolphins. The Bengals, the last team with an O in the win column. Coming up on this week's show, we'll tell you who won the AFC and NFC Player of the Week honors. Ty Halleck joins us with his new top five. There's a new top dog on his list. We'll bring in our Big Game Bound correspondents to break down the big matchups between the Seahawks and the 49ers, and we'll take you to Cleveland to find out what's going on with the Browns. Our big guest, former NFL tight end Martellus Bennett. One of the topics we'll touch on his thoughts on players like his brother who've taken a stance for social justice. And Bob Harris of Football Diehards will help set up your fantasy football lineup for this week. Let's start with our big shout-outs. The AFC Offensive Player of the Week is Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. He threw for one touchdown, rushed for two more, and helped the Ravens hand the Patriots their first loss of the season. Seattle quarterback Russell Wilson is the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Second time he's won that. Wilson threw for 378 yards and 5 touchdowns in the Seahawks overtime win over Tampa. The NFC Defensive Player of the Week, Cowboys safety Xavier Woods. He had a pick, a forced fumble, and helped the Cowboys beat the Giants and stay in first place in the NFC East. And the AFC Defensive Player of the Week is Pittsburgh defensive lineman Bud Dupree. He had a monster game in the Steelers win over the Colts, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and recovered a fumble. The Steelers have won 3 straight. Time for What the Halleck. Ty Halleck played 7 seasons in the National Football League with the Lions, the Jaguars, and the Bears, and we bring him in each week. And Ty, we've got a big change in your top 5, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, Baltimore's the reason for that. They beat the Patriots. Lamar Jackson, what's he doing? You know, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. He threw a touchdown. What's he doing that makes him so difficult?
Well, it's partly what he's doing, but I also believe it's what the offensive coordinator and the Baltimore Ravens are doing with him. They're literally looking to accentuate his talents. The ability to run the football as a quarterback is not something that's new to the National Football League, but it's not something that's ever really been done, Jack, in a way that you know, people have bought into and have agreed to just say, okay, let's do this. And I really believe they've done that. I mean, they are taking plays. And if you look at the way they set up, I mean, you look at the Auburn Tigers in college football and what Gus Malzahn's done with multiple formations, multiple run formations, and run pass formations with 2 guys in the backfield, tight ends, fullback types, etc., and weaving that into this offense. They're giving him the opportunity to play quarterback, and he's a guy who will stand in the pocket, but he's also a guy that can get rid of it with his feet, and they can design runs for him, and he appears to be, in my opinion, very smart about how to get down and not get himself hurt. So they're just taking advantage of his talents, and they're committing to what those talents are, as opposed to saying, well, here in the National Football League, this is the way we do it. I think they're doing a marvelous job in play calling and play design and allowing him to be that good quarterback, and it's certainly showing.
Yeah, and how difficult is that to scheme for?
Well, it's very difficult because you're just not used to it. Typically, the quarterback's not part of your game plan to have to worry about tackling, to have to worry about in terms of the run game, because that affords the offense to have an extra blocker that you're not used to. So I think it showed the other night. I mean, it's not that they're kryptonite to Bill Belichick, but it certainly, Bill Belichick took a lot of notes. If you watch, his pencil was writing a ton because he was seeing the formations they were getting him into and the numbers game that he was getting into, and he knew he was losing, and they just took advantage of it.
Last year, Raiders were kind of a national joke, but here they are, 4-4. Got that win over the Lions this last weekend. They've already beaten the Colts. Is John Gruden onto something?
I think John Gruden's onto something. I also think that John Gruden, quite frankly, for all the stuff he took for the Khalil Mack trade to the Chicago Bears, he'll remind you one of those players that he got for that is Josh Jacobs, his running back from Alabama, who quite frankly is phenomenal. I mean, he's strong, he's fast, he's powerful, he gets after it, he's able to block. He does things that a first rounder should do, but I think John Gruden's onto something. He realizes this is about personnel. I'm not 100% sold on it. He believes he has his quarterback yet, even though Carr's done a pretty good job and has been good lately. I think John Gruden is looking at stockpiling and getting more players. He's done that with some of the trades he made. And again, he would be the first to remind you as well some of those players that he's going to end up getting because of that Khalil Mack trade. And look where he is now with the Chicago Bears, who are struggling, versus Oakland, who seems to be trending up. So yes, I do believe a little bit in what he's doing.
Dolphins picked up their first win, so only one winless team left, the Bengals. Who is the worst team in the NFL right now? Because we've got a lot of teams that are in the hunt for that first pick.
Well, to me, you're juggling between the Bengals and the Dolphins. And the reality of it is the Bengals, yes, got it. But then you start to say, well, what do you mean? You got to leave out the Jets, which is a whole nother mess. So there's three people there at the bottom that they can certainly wrestle over it. And they're going to try to figure out who gets that first round pick. It's tough. It's tough for the fans. It's tough for people to go through that week to week. But, you certainly don't want to be in that position. But they're there, and they're going to have to make some changes for sure.
All right, we got big changes in your top 5.
Absolutely. I look at the Kansas City Chiefs. I think with a guy who was coaching high school football not long ago has made them relevant and competitive. Yes, they are 6-3. They haven't won every single game, but they have done very, very well. And it appears that Mahomes will be back and healthy. Baltimore Ravens for what they did against the New England Patriots, which seems odd because the New England Patriots now are number 3. The San Francisco 49ers, you could easily put them at the top. I just think they're young. I have been the whole way through this deal very impressed with the New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton is an NFL phenomenal coach, and he is way at the top of that list. They've done a Super Bowl. They've done this, a lot of winning without their quarterback. Now Drew Brees is back. Good defense, good special teams. They have the recipe to be the top team in the National Football League.
Oh, let's break down the big matchups now, and this is one of the best games of the year. Seahawks at 49ers. Seattle 4-0 on the road. The 49ers 3-0 at home. And we'll start with that game in San Francisco. Mark Carpenter is the sports director at KRON. First of 2 meetings between the Niners and the Seahawks. Mark, San Francisco holds that game-and-a-half lead. Is this statement time for the 49ers?
Well, I think if you talk with 49er fans out here, they'd say, how many statement games does this team need to play, right? Because you go back to the Rams game. That was supposed to be the statement game. Then Monday night against the Browns. Here it is. They beat the Panthers by 50 points in that outing there. And then now when they play the Seahawks here, it's like, all right, what does this team really look like? How good is this San Francisco team? Now, I think it is fair to say that this is the first time the 49ers will be playing a seasoned playoff caliber quarterback, so it is going to be an enormous test. It has the division stakes attached to it. I think this is one of those where you really can't throw the records out, and you look at the numbers, you say, hey, Seattle's weak in this area here on defense. They're not as good in this department here. I think we're going to be getting a good back and forth thriller Monday night.
All right, last week, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals became just the second team to put 20 points on the board against this 49er defense. Now you've got Russell Wilson coming to town. He's on the short list of MVP candidates. How can they contain him?
Well, throughout this entire undefeated run, there have been few opportunities to see, what exactly are the weaknesses of the San Francisco 49ers defense, and that we saw a little bit when it came against facing Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals here, a running dual-threat quarterback here who's a threat in a variety of ways, and Russell Wilson is so much more experienced here, so this is going to be an enormous challenge for the 49ers defense because throughout this entire time, they have been getting to the quarterback with just 4 guys, very little blitzing. But Russell Wilson is a guy that thrives on having a pocket completely break down around him, always making off-schedule plays. And so it'd be fascinating to see just how the 49ers defense at all levels responds.
All right, this stat blew me away, Mark. Jimmy Garoppolo now 16-2 in his first 18 NFL starts. Has he made believers out of his teammates and 49er fans?
It's funny because they've won 8 games, but it wasn't until the Arizona game where we're thinking hey, that was the Jimmy Garoppolo game right there, because throughout this time we've seen how the 49ers can win in a variety of ways. They can win with defense. They can win with a solid running game. They can win 9-0 against the Redskins in horrible weather. But we have yet to really see the Garoppolo outing where, he's dinking and he's throwing downfield. He's really making big plays. He's lighting up the touchdowns. And what we saw against Arizona was seeing how Garoppolo can really be the franchise quarterback for this squad. He's thrown for 300-plus yards, 4 touchdowns against the Cardinals. The first 49ers quarterback to have that type of performance since Jeff Garcia in 2003. And so now we're seeing that Garoppolo can really run the show, can really attack the offense. And now it also puts on film here, hey, the 49ers, they have a great defense. They have a great run game. And if Jimmy Garoppolo needs to win you a game, that can happen as well.
For the Seahawks perspective, we take it to Seattle. Aaron Levine is the sports director at Q13. Aaron, the 49ers are the last undefeated team. Seahawks are still in the hunt for a division title. How much pressure are they putting on themselves to win this one and avoid falling 2.5 games back?
Well, obviously, if you want to win the division, you have to win games like this. But in terms of pressure, I honestly don't think they're looking at it any differently. The phrase you hear around here is every week is a championship opportunity. And I know it might sound cliche, but if you hear it enough, you start to believe it, because this team approaches every game the same exact way. And when you get a game like this team is pretty even-keeled. The proof is in the record on the national stage. Pete Carroll's teams are 27-5-1 in primetime games. Oh, and by the way, they've also won their last 8 games before a bye week. Their bye is next week.
And the Seahawks are 7-2, but their point differential is only 18. By comparison, the 49ers 133. What do you make of this team right now, Aaron? Are they lucky to be 7-2, or is this a legit Super Bowl contender?
I don't think they're quote-unquote lucky to be 7-2, but I also think that they would only be 2-7 if Russell Wilson wasn't their quarterback. That is how much he means to this team, especially given all the close games they've played so far this year. Listen, have they dominated anybody this year? No, but they've beaten teams they were expected to beat. Their 2 losses are against the 7-1 New Orleans Saints and the 6-2 Ravens, who just beat New England. This team certainly has a long way to go, but they've put themselves in a good position right now. And since 2012, no team in the NFL has more regular season wins in the months of November, December, and January than the Seahawks do. They have 45 wins. The New England Patriots have 44 wins. So Pete Carroll's teams have had winning records in the second half of the regular season, 7 out of the last 8 years. It should be fun to see what happens down the stretch.
Yeah, by no means did I mean they were lucky, but thanks for the quote. What does Russell Wilson have to do on Monday night? How much does he look forward to playing on this stage?
He loves this stage. Ultimately, though, I think it's less about what Russell Wilson needs to do and more about what the guys around him need to do. The Seahawks defense needs to step up. They need to put pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo, or the Niners are just going to run away with this one. The Hawks only have 15 sacks so far this season total. They're on pace for way below their average under Pete Carroll. They need to run the ball effectively. They need to control the clock, and then Russell can take advantage of play-action passes. That's when he's at his best. But big picture, this is really the first time that people have been talking about him as a legitimate MVP candidate, and the numbers definitely support it. Now he has the national spotlight, and it's not just this week. It's in 2 weeks against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. It's on Monday Night Football the following week against the Minnesota Vikings, and then Sunday Night Football again against the Rams. So 4 straight games in prime time for Russell Wilson to show what he has got. That's when we're going to find out the answer.
Yeah, he's definitely got a shot to make a case here. Aaron, thank you very much. Well, I can't exactly call this a big matchup, 6-2 versus 2-6, but we'll take a few minutes to talk about the Bills and the Browns Sunday at 1 o'clock. Cleveland has to be one of the biggest disappointments in the NFL this season. So we call on John Telich, the longtime sports director at WJW in Cleveland. John, 4 straight losses. This team has some people uttering the word Super Bowl in the preseason. Now we're hearing the term dumpster fire. How did we get here?
It's just been amazing, the transformation from a team that everybody had hyped so much and thought they were going to go deep into the playoffs, now with virtually a very microscopic chance of making the playoffs, Jack. You're absolutely right. So what has happened to make this quote-unquote the dumpster fire? There was a lot of hype, a lot of talent brought here to Cleveland to make this a good team, but so far they just have not been able to make talent transformed to teamwork for 60 minutes on Sunday afternoons or whatever crazy time they happen to be playing. Tough part of their schedule in the first half, but they have dug so much of a hole, it's very difficult to climb out. And also, if you were to say this Sunday at First Energy Stadium, a 6-2 team would be facing a 2-6 team, I think before the season, you would have had the Browns at 6-2 and the Buffalo Bills at 2-6.
Yeah, exactly. Jermaine Whitehead lost his mind on social media. He gets cut. Baker Mayfield is feuding with the media. Is there a serious lack of focus or a culture issue in that locker room?
I would say before the season, as I mentioned before, the amount of hype that was surrounding this football team, there were many opportunities for them to kind of get off track. Early in preseason, in training camp, not much in the OTAs. Odell Beckham Jr. here in Cleveland, he was elsewhere not taking part. People kind of said, oh, that's no big issue. But now we find that to be one of the aspects of Browns football football this year. OBJ, Baker, the connection that's not really there. Plus all of the penalties. We got the first week of the season with 18 penalties, and now they come to the 8th game of the year. They cut the penalties down, they cut the turnovers down, but they're still making bad decisions, and that does not add up to 60 strong minutes of football, Jack, and that adds up to L's instead of W's.
That often adds up to a coach losing his job. How safe is Freddie Kitchens right now?
Well, I think there's been a lot of a clamor from fans to have him removed, but the sense we get is that they're going to ride out the rest of this year with Freddie Kitchens here in Cleveland. And then all of us in the media and the fans as well will kind of be on coach watch around the holidays, and perhaps they will make a move. Other than if this Browns team turns things around and wins, let's say, loses one game and wins the rest of the way, they're in a conversation for a playoff spot. And then if that happens, then you have to strongly consider Freddie Kitchens sticking around. But if I were to put the odds right now, I'd say they're much greater that he's not around after this year, Jack.
John, it seems like you've been on coach watch quite a few times in Cleveland there. That's got to be a recipe for disaster, doesn't it?
It does, because they always think change is going to be the greatest answer for greatness to come upon your franchise. They've only had one playoff game in the 20 years that this team has been back since they moved to the Baltimore area. And so one playoff appearance does not satisfy the football fan base here in Northeast Ohio. And that's disconcerting, because they want change. They want the next person in to get the job done the right way. And each and every time they make a decision, it's not the best type of a decision, and so you get poor football after poor football after poor football. It's a revolving thing.
Yeah, and to think Bill Belichick was once a head coach there.
Unbelievable, my friend, unbelievable.
Our big guest this week is former NFL tight end Martellus Bennett. He played 10 seasons in the National Football League with the Cowboys, Giants, Bears, Patriots, and Packers. Won a ring in New England. He was also known as being one of the most quotable players in the locker room. He joins us from L.A. Martellus, you're a Renaissance man. You played football, wrote a children's book, released a rap album. Now you're educating us and dishing out terrible haircuts?
You think you know football?
That's subjective. The terrible haircut is subjective. Everything else you said was not. All that awesome stuff you said for me before was not subjective. But terrible haircut, it's all about taste. Some people like chili bows. Girls are into that.
Winner gets tickets to the College Football Playoff National Championship. Losers get bowl cuts.
You get a bowl cut by coming to, well, you had to participate in the Dos Equis College Football bowl game, where I ask you questions. There's an exam. You come in. If you get the answer right, you get to go to the next round. If you get it wrong, you get a bowl cut, and the winner gets tickets to the national championship game. So it's either you win tickets to a bowl game or you win tickets to a seat to get a bowl cut from me for free too. I even charge them.
Well, that's nice of you. Hey, now I'm the one asking the questions, and if you get this wrong, I give you the bowl cut, okay? Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year?
You can't really, that's all about probability. There's no true answer to that. I'm not an algorithm. Like, you can't really predict the game of football, right? Because the game of football, anybody could lose at any time, right? So there's always favorites, but upsets happen, and upsets can continue to happen throughout the year. So I don't know.
All right, so you played with Tom Brady. You won a Super Bowl with him. What makes him the GOAT?
Are we calling Tom the GOAT? Is that like the official the term for Tom Brady now? Well, I think I think his personality does, because he is humble enough to meet people where they are, right? There's not a lot of players of his caliber that will meet a player of, that's lesser than at their level to bring them up. Right? Most people expect you to like come up here where the kings are, but Tom is always down with the people and be like, hey, let me show you how to be great. And I think that's what makes him special. A lot of quarterbacks expect you to show up great. He just wants to make sure that he does everything he can to help you be great.
At some point, Brady or Belichick will have to retire. Can one succeed without the other, in your opinion?
I mean, we'll have to see, right? Like, that's the interesting thing, right? Their legacies are kind of tied together. You could be like, oh, he only won games because of this, or he only won games because of him. And I think that's something that's going to like tarnish both of them as competitors, right? Because are kind of like, no, I'm great at what I did, and he's great at what he did. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're both great. Why can't we both just be great together, right? No one ever talks about Scottie Pippen.
Martellus, your brother Michael, playing for the Cowboys now, he's one of the players that's taken a stand on social justice. And, you know, with the whole anthem controversies in the center of it, years from now, are they going to be looked on, your brother and Colin Kaepernick, as heroes or villains? Or, you know, what are your thoughts on what your brother and those guys are doing?
That's all subjective as well, right? It depends on your perspective on where you stand as an individual. So there's really no, it depends what you stand for, what you believe in on that. So you can't really say they're a villain or a hero, because every hero is a villain to somebody else and every villain is a hero to someone, right? So I think that really comes down to anytime you try to make change or do things that are different or to change the world or change your mind, it comes with being vilified. So it's just part of the territory.
That change is difficult, and that's a difficult stand to take, but he's taken it. And are you very proud of your brother?
I love my brother. Yeah, he's my brother. I'm proud of, I mean, all that stuff, their stuff is cool, but I'm more proud of the man and father and husband that he is than anything else that he does and the family member that he is. When I think of my brother, I don't think about all that stuff. I'm proud that he has a point of view and he sticks with his point of view and he has something that he believes in and he educates himself. That's what I'm proud of. Like, everything else is a product of him as a human being. So I'm proud of the human that he is, yeah.
Time for fantasy football talk. Each week we call on Bob Harris of Football Diehards to help you with your teams. Bob joins us again now. Bob, 6 teams on bye week: Patriots, Eagles, Texans, Redskins, Broncos, and Jaguars. Anybody you see on most waiver wires right now that would be worth a pickup?
I mean, there's going to be some new bodies in Miami. The improving Miami Dolphins, ask the New York Jets, they'll tell you this. So there's an issue at running back there, right, where Mark Walton was suspended 4 games, so Kalen Ballage moves up a little bit in the rotation. Also some issues with Preston Williams at wide receiver. If somebody for some reason had let go of Devin Singletary in your draft, jump all over that right quick. It seems like the Singletary train has left the station, so to speak. So there are bodies out there. Zach Pascal in Indianapolis is a guy you shouldn't overlook either. There are injuries and attrition there. T.Y. Hilton's going to miss a couple more weeks. And Paris Campbell underwent hand surgery. So there's an issue there. Watch the Eagles. Maybe they're going to bring Jordan Matthews back with Deshaun Jackson going to miss some time or essentially the rest of the season. So and look, if someone's let go of Ronald Jones, Bruce Arians has announced that he's taken over as the starter in Tampa Bay. There are people out there, hit the footballdiehards.com website for a full listing. But this is a tough week to grind through with the bye, and there are a lot of hard decisions to make in terms of, if you get to a point, like if you have the Patriots defense, do you really want to let them go? What if it's the last spot on your roster? Do you take that 0 for a week? Or do you suck it up, go grab another defense, hope nobody gets the Patriots? I think these are tough. In particular, the Patriots, for me, I don't want to lose out on them. That might be worth taking a 0 for a week, given the kind of scoring range they've taken in. And I don't like to take zeros.
Nobody does. All right, patience is something most fantasy owners do not have. When you pick up a guy like Terry McLaurin on waivers, and he's had a couple of quiet weeks, how long do you hold on to a guy like that?
Well, again, this is going to likely be determined by how much roster space you have. Look, if you don't want to take that 0, if you have to churn, and maybe you need this week a starting body on there, and Zach Pascal's there, a wide receiver who you think can put up some numbers for you, I'm fine moving on with the McLaurin. The run was nice. It was satisfying, but we don't know what the quarterback situation is going forward. Not a great offense. Seems to be hell-bent on running with Bill Callahan at the helm. So I'd be okay moving on from McLaurin. Would love to keep him. Look, I don't want to let go of anything of any value whatsoever, but we get these hard decisions on this 6-week, 16 bye. It is a brutal one, and you'll have to make some tough decisions like that. McLaurin could be some detritus for you.
All right, so Bob, you're a guy who's won a few leagues in your time. Advice for people as they set up their rosters for the playoffs.
Yeah, that playoff success proof that age and persistence pay off. Look, there's some things you can do. Start leaning up your roster. Start looking ahead at strength of schedule. Again, something you can find at footballdiehards.com. Find teams with light, players, or pick on guys with light schedules towards the end of the run, especially week 16, assuming your team has, in its infinite wisdom, made that the championship week. If you have two defenses, if you have two kickers, if you have even two tight ends in leagues where you only play one, start thinking about paring down some of those onesie positions to just one option. Make sure that the one you keep that has passed their bye week, but start paring it down and start going out and looking at your opponent's rosters and start looking for true handcuffs. If you have Dalvin Cook, see who has that Alex Madison, or go out and find these guys and see what you have to make them offers and start making some active trades, because your trade deadlines are likely coming up soon as well. So start figuring that out too, but mostly start paring down, dialing in. Keep the guys on that are just the best cut, make your roster lean. So if you have to make a move, you can grab a guy quickly off the waiver wire.
All right, this is Bob Harris from Football Diehards. You can hear him on Sirius XM Fantasy Football from 6 to 8 p.m. Also read him on footballdiehards.com. Bob, thanks again. We'll talk to you again next week. That'll put a wrap on Week 10 of Big Game Bound. We'll be here every week through the NFL season, streaming a new episode at 1 o'clock on Thursday. A big thanks to our correspondents, Mark Carpenter, Aaron Levine, John Telich, our guest, Martellus Bennett, our analyst, Ty Halleck, and football fantasy expert, Bob Harris. For our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and our studio crew, I'm Jack Doles. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Big Game Bound.